Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following all the news on the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. It is our 50th episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Damon Hadfield, and as always, I'm joined by Jonathan Dornbush, host of IGN's PlayStation Podcast Beyond.
You barely look over 30 episodes, Damon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. 50 episodes young. And Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox Podcast Unlocked.
Happy 50th, Damon.
Thank you. And to both of you, you've been with me along the journey all through last year as well. We're going to talk about the new PS5 patch for God of War that just was released this week. And I believe Jonathan has some impressions on Destruction Allstars for us. But let's begin with those dirty, rotten scalpers that have been in the news a lot lately ever since these consoles launched. I know it's been frustrating trying to find these consoles for a lot of people. And to make matters worse, you're seeing them pop up on reselling sites hundreds of dollars above the MSRP, if you will. Apparently, we know just how many PS5s have been resold here in the US. At least that number would be 10 to 15% if a recent report is accurate. This comes from a data engineer by the name of Michael Driscoll. He posted the latest in a series of reports on the scalping market, focused this time on PlayStation 5. So the report scraped data for thousands of listings on eBay and StockX from launch up to January 16th. He included only listings that had actually sold, excluded any listing using terms commonly included in scam listings, excluded listings from low feedback accounts, and removed all results that sold for less than the recommended retail price. He was left with the figure of 157,000 PS5s sold at retail price or higher on eBay and StockX. He then looked into active listings on services such as OfferUp, Facebook, Marketplace, and Craigslist, and came to the conclusion that a likely 10 to 15% of PS5s have been resold here in the US. On eBay and StockX, the most recent estimated average price for a digital edition PS5 is $800. That's twice its recommended price, while a disc edition is $849. He estimates that scalpers have made, ready, $43.2 million in profit during this time, and that eBay, PayPal, and StockX made a combined $15.9 million themselves as a result of these sales. So first of all, Jonathan, do these numbers sound low or high to you?
Definitely not low. I think they probably sound on point for about what what I would have expected, especially just because I think we've heard so much about rampant scalping and reselling, especially with this console generation. It's definitely unfortunate to hear, especially sort of with those average estimated prices, to hear that people are buying these consoles for twice what they're worth, and probably in some cases, obviously more, when the console lines are more blurred than ever, and there are still so many games being made for PS4 and Xbox One, One X versus the PS5 and Series X and S. It is unfortunate to hear that so many people are buying these at such a higher price. And obviously, if PlayStation and Xbox had made more units, if they had been able to, they would have sold. So there's definitely obvious demand for it. But it is unfortunate to hear, I think, when you see so much of that money going into the pockets of people reselling these things rather than necessarily the developers and producers behind these.
Yeah, Ryan, we're talking about PlayStation 5 here, of course, but what's your take on this scalper situation?
I think I'm in the wrong line of work, Damon. It sounds like there is money to be made, but in all seriousness, I think it's good that the community, that the media keeps talking about this, because I mean it's not going away, particularly as supply continues to be constrained. And I think the more that this is talked about in the gaming community, the more likely that Microsoft and Sony, and hopefully Nintendo as well, when their time comes, will start laying the groundwork to start, kind of having more of an Apple-like direct sales model for future console launches to try and avoid this kind of thing a little bit more than is happening now.
Yeah. The interesting thing to me is that these resale sites are also profiting off of this. So there's little incentive for them to do too much policing on this activity.
Right. Well, we had sorry, I was just going to say we had spoken a few months ago now, I guess, but a few weeks back on the show about, I believe, eBay sort of stamping down on those listings that were just for photos of a PS5. Right. But obviously, they don't want to get rid of all of these listings because, as you were saying, but at the end of the day, they do really help their bottom line.
Yeah. Jonathan, I believe we've got sales figures from Sony this week for PlayStation 5. Is it right? They shipped 4.5 million units in 2020.
Yes, shipped 4.5 million units in 2020. So shipped, obviously, this is sort of the thing we've seen more and more throughout the years when it comes to game sales, but shipped is a different term than sold through to consumers. So this is shipped to retailers or to, online marketplaces that you're buying from. So most likely a lot of those have been sold because as we see, people really, really, really want to buy PS5s. So they're probably mostly, if not all, sold out by this point. But it seems like a pretty healthy number, and especially alongside that, we saw things like Miles Morales also selling 4.1 million units. So it seems like a pretty strong start.
Yeah, it's curious to me that they're going with the shipped number, because I would assume they sold every unit that they shipped last year. It's not like they're just sitting on store shelves around there. This is supposed to be, Sony's calling it their biggest launch ever. And Ryan, I think Microsoft used the same terminology for the launch of Xbox Series X. Of course, we don't have any sales numbers for them. I wouldn't expect them, would you, since they stopped releasing hardware numbers a long time ago?
Yeah, it's definitely not a thing that they tend to give out anymore. They're given the Game Pass number. That's a number that they're quite proud of, 18 million at the moment. But yes, hardware numbers are no longer being given out. But that said, I mean, at this super, super early stage of the new generation of consoles, the market leader after these first couple months isn't necessarily the one that sold better. It's just the one that shipped more. And you're right, we don't have the Microsoft number. I'd kind of be curious of what it is in comparison to Sony's 4.5 million shipped. Daniel Ahmad, a renowned industry analyst at Nico Partners, who is well respected in the field of NPD numbers and console sales and keeps a close eye on that stuff, told me that he estimates Microsoft is a touch under 1 million less than Sony, so maybe around close to 3.5 million on the Microsoft side, and whether that's just because Sony was able to get more made, presumably, that would seem to be the difference, but. Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see as the supply constraints ease what the sales numbers end up doing over time.
Sure. Yeah, because it's not like you can walk into a store and find an Xbox Series X sitting on the shelf either.
No.
Okay, let's switch to talking about games. One of the best games on PlayStation 4, heck, one of the best games ever made. It's got a native PS5 version this week with an update. It's God of War. It's got a 60 frames per second and 4K update that was released this week. Now, on the PlayStation 4 Pro version of God of War, which is out in 2018, players would have to make a choice between a graphics mode that favored performance and one that favored resolution. Now, you don't need to sacrifice either one. The PS5 version syncs to 60 frames per second, uses 4K checkerboard resolution, and 2160p. So, Jonathan, have you had a chance to check out this brand new version of an already very pretty game?
Yes, yeah, I started playing it a bit last night and lost more than I expected to of the evening to it. It looks absolutely beautiful. It's not a remaster or anything, so it's not as if everything in the game has been polished for PS5 specifically. But with the patch essentially giving you the best of both worlds that the PS4 Pro options made you choose between is just such a nice added addition to have. And it really, even from the jump, makes a notable difference. I played the game originally in the resolution mode, so I was playing typically at 30 frames per second with the focus more on the resolution. But now that I don't have to, decide between both, it running at 60 frames per second, the action feels snappier already, on top of, the action feeling pretty damn great thanks to that axe and everything else going on.
Yeah.
So it is definitely a joy to have, and it's something that I was honestly hoping for / waiting on a replay for, specifically in the hopes that this would happen. And I'm really happy the Santa Monica team decided to put this out.
Yeah, I love the game, but I haven't played it since I finished it back in 2018. So I'm really looking forward to diving back into it. What do you think? Is this too far of a stretch? Does this arrival of the PS5 version of God of War tell us anything about the upcoming Ragnarok?
I wish it did. I wish it patched in a secret ending. Who knows? Maybe it does. It's only been out for a couple hours. But no, I don't think anything other than we're likely going to see them try to get as much as they can out of the PS5 with Ragnarok, because the God of War really put the PS4 through its paces and delivered just such a beautiful world. So I definitely expect sort of a similar caliber when it comes to them making their debut on the PS5 with a proper PS5 sequel.
So, Ryan, we're seeing Sony sort of slowly putting out now current gen versions of last gen games like God of War. How is it working with Xbox, and what approach is Microsoft taking? Because they've long held the policy that their games should work on whichever Xbox device you have, right?
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft's been right there ahead of the curve on this. Day one, we had the Series X optimization for Gears 5, for Forza Horizon 4, and then a little just after launch for Halo the Master Chief Collection. So it's good to see both first-party publishers doing the same thing. I mean, with God of War, it's particularly smart, I think, on Sony Santa Monica's part, because not only do they drum up a little extra publicity for what is already, I mean, it's, as you said, it's one of the best games of all time, certainly of the previous generation, heading into the sequel that's due out later this year. But it's clearly a tech test for them. Like they're getting their feet wet with the PS5. We saw this with The Last of Us on the you know, the end of the PS3 generation and the beginning of the PS4 generation, where Naughty Dog released the updated version for PS4, and then eventually we got The Last of Us Part 2, which is an incredible looking game technologically that really puts the PS4 through its paces. So you know, it's kind of a two birds one stone scenario for Sony Santa Monica and other developers that have done the same thing. They're certainly not the first to do it.
Sure. Yeah, of course. I look forward to native PS5 versions of Ghost of Tsushima and Last of Us Part 2. But there's actually a brand new PS5 exclusive out this week. It's Destruction All-Stars. It's part of PS Plus, so PS5 owners get it if you're a PlayStation Plus subscriber at no extra cost. Jonathan, have you had any time to go hands-on with Destruction All-Stars?
Yeah, I've been playing it for a bit since it launched, and I would also definitely recommend, because obviously we were talking earlier about how hard it is to get a PS5. Regardless of whether or not you have one, you should still redeem Destruction All-Stars, because even if you don't have a PS5, you can still pick up the game on PS Plus if you're a subscriber. But yes, but definitely I'm having a lot of fun so far. It feels like it is a sort of strange combination of things, because normally when I would think of a car combat game, I wouldn't think, oh, I should also be getting out of the car, because of course you can choose one of 16 different hero characters and essentially run around on foot as them, because you're so often wrecking your own car or getting wrecked as you're trying to hit other cars. You need to hop from one vehicle to the next. There's a lot of fun from, I think, the mayhem of it all, like when you're in the middle of a match and it's just kind of a free-for-all of cars smashing into each other and pulling off tight turns to be able to ram into the side of a car that's not expecting it. There's a lot of fun wackiness to all of that. I think there are definitely some rough quality of life issues that need to be resolved soon. The game sort of defaults to voice chat just being on when you go into a multiplayer game, unless you are in a private lobby or a private chat on your PS5. So I started up a match for the first time last night, thought I could just kind of mute it as I went in, but I couldn't stop other people from talking at me through my controller. So I just had that going on. So, and the developers are aware of this. They've already said that they were looking to have some sort of update in the works and be able to give more information. So they're very much keeping an eye on the issues and problems people are running into. But there's definitely a great solid base and an idea there. But I think it needs a little bit of working when it comes to the progression systems and the way it's going to keep us in a loop, so that I'll be enjoying this 2-3 months from now rather than 2 or 3 days from now.
Yeah, it is an interesting strategy to launch these multiplayer-focused games into a subscription service like PlayStation Plus. Before we go, I've got your poll results from last week. We asked if you have Xbox Game Pass, and the winning result with almost 40% of the vote was Game Pass Ultimate, baby, which I love to see. Game Pass Ultimate is a great service. Any Xbox owner out there should be subscribing to Game Pass Ultimate, in my opinion. Your poll for next week is If you don't have one yet, how badly do you want a PS5 or Series X? Are you willing to pay a scalper? Are you in an online waiting room as we speak? Make sure to vote at IGN.com, and we will share the results with you next week. And that will about do it for this week's episode of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Ryan and Jonathan. We'll be back next week with more PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series news. Friday, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you then.